Holy crap, what an episode of Silo. Things are really picking up steam as we get into the final episodes of the season. In this video, we'll be looking at episode 8 and all the new mysteries, clues, and theories. This is a non-book spoiler, I haven't read them, and I've left timestamps below to all the topics I'll be covering. Now get on your suits, it's time to clean. Up until this point, we've had very limited knowledge on Juliette's mother, Hanna. Luckily, this episode provides us with a wealth of new information surrounding not only her, but the dynamics of the Nichols family. Episode 8 begins a few months after the death of Juliette's brother, Jacob, who we saw briefly at the beginning of episode 4. In that episode, we never learned what ailment Jacob suffered from, but episode 8 teaches us that it was a heart defect. Hanna and Juliette are on a mission to purchase a rabbit, one that suffers from a similar heart problem. That's because Hanna has devised a magnifying device that can be instrumental in performing surgeries that may have saved the lives of those like Jacob's. As we'll find out in her secret file found in Sims's cabinet, Hanna's profession was listed as surgeon, but this magnifying device that she's created goes against the rules of the pact. Remember back in episode 5 that Martha told us these two big rules: no mechanization to go up and down the silo, and no magnification beyond a certain power. So this device would be a violation of the pact. All this talk of magnification makes me think way back to episode 1 when Allison and George attempt to read an inscription on the back of the hard drive, and Allison says,
"Got anything more powerful?"
It looks as though the inscription reads library. Is the hard drive a library of sorts? This magnifying device is what Judicial searches for when Juliette is a child. With only Juliette and her husband Pete knowing of its existence, Hanna accuses Pete of informing Judicial on her. Thus, Juliette blames her father for the death of Hanna because that magnifying device was one of a few things that kept her going after Jacob's death. It's not until Juliette finds that secret file on her mother that she knows the truth. Pete never turned in his wife. She was caught through the constant audio and video surveillance spying on the Silo citizens. This results in Juliette apologizing to her father and the two reconciling. We also learn that Pete left young Hanna in mechanical for her own safety. He saw just how much she was like her mother, and had she stayed up top with him, would go searching for answers and get herself killed just like Hanna did. In a flashback, we see that the rabbit survived the surgery, suggesting that Hanna's magnifying device was a success, making it even more heart-wrenching when it gets shattered by Judicial. This device could have saved countless other Silo lives. Well, it looks like in exchange for helping Sims, Gloria gets to live in her dream world. But what I found most interesting is when Gloria asks him,
"Do you really think you'll win?"
And instead of him saying, "I have to," he says, "We have to." It's the first subtle hint that Sims isn't the one pulling the strings. Sims could have killed Gloria, but doesn't, partly because Gloria helped him and his wife conceive. Episode 8 introduces us to a Judicial character named Amundsen, who seems to have taken on the role of Sims's shadow, a role Douglas Trumbull was set on taking back in episode 4. He's tasked with finding the hard drive which was left in Gloria's air vent by Sheriff Holston and subsequently retrieved by Juliette. Now, Juliette tried to access this hard drive using the nursery's computer, but was not granted access. As we'll later find out from Lucas Kyle, who works in IT, a hard drive with sysop security can only be accessed by the head of IT, Judicial Security, or Sheriff on their own personal computers. Now, Amundsen raids the Sheriff's Department with the intention of finding this device. Fun fact, one of the raiders is named Howie, named after Hugh Howey, the book's writer. Juliette was cautious, however, and hid the drive in the nursery to be retrieved at a later time. Initially, Juliette wanted to take the drive down to Martha Walker, but is held back by these checkpoints. Thus, she takes drastic measures and enlists the help of Lucas. And boy oh boy, if Lucas isn't in the friend zone yet, he certainly is now. Even after being shown that they're being watched and that the murders of Ruth and Marnes were orchestrated by Judicial, he's still a coward and doesn't help Juliette, stating that he has to be there to help his mother. But this often makes for good storytelling, setting him up as a coward who will later redeem himself and prove he has the strength to take on the bad guys. There's even this flashback with young Juliette where she talks about her aunt not coming to her mother's funeral because she's a coward, even calling her mother one for killing herself. So this theme of cowardice is definitely in play, and I'm guessing this will not be the last time we see Lucas. And just a reminder, if you like these kinds of videos, please be sure to like and subscribe. Every little bit helps the channel out. Now, the raid on the Sheriff's Department was illegal illegal according to the pact, which allows Paul and Juliette to arrest Sims. This gives Juliette a brief moment to search his office, uncovering a secret cabinet of various files. These seem to be restricted profiles of those deemed enemies of the silo. The first name is Shirley Campbell. We know of one Shirley in the show who is Hannah and Martha's friend in the Down Deep. I'm wondering if it's her. Then there's Martha Walker. Shirley will later meet with Martha and say this really interesting line.
Knox said they'd eventually punish us for the rebellion.
The rebellion happened over 140 years ago, so none of them were alive. Now, I haven't read the books, but it makes me think that those who were part of the rebellion and or sympathizers were forced into the lower levels of the silo after the failed coup. Unfortunately, we never get to see Shirley or Martha's file, but we do get to see Hannah's. Born to Frank and Joyce Haslam, she was an exemplary citizen until after the death of Jacob, in which she sought out relics to build her magnification device. If Hanna was kept a close eye on, plus we know Judicial will commit murder to keep order, is it not possible then that Hannah's death wasn't a suicide? That someone in Judicial killed her and made it look like a suicide, just like what happened to George? Where I think this story is headed is a new rebellion, and quite frankly, I see it as one of a few ways Juliette can get out of the jam she's currently in. If the people were to know about all these cover-ups, the constant surveillance, murders, I'd be willing to bet they'd revolt. Plus, there are two really interesting shots I picked up on that kind of hint at this. The more obvious of the two is of the father and child watching Sims beat up Juliette. They know this is wrong. This is an overstretch of power. Then there's this guard who watches Bernard and Sims arrest Juliette. She knows Juliette never said she wanted to go out to clean. It points at the corruption within the silo. Then there's Paul's wife who says there are whispers among the silo goers that Juliette is laying the groundwork for another rebellion. So I think this is where the story's headed. The big reveal of the episode is that Bernard is the big baddie. It isn't Sims or Meadows pulling the strings, but Bernard himself. He justifies the murders of George, Ruth, and Marnes, stating,
"The needs of the many require the sacrifices of the few."
This is somewhat hinted at a few episodes ago when he says the most important part of the silo isn't the reactor, rather the servers and the control of information. He was, and perhaps still is, the head of IT. What I want to know is if Bernard is merely a slave to the idea that the outside world is toxic, thus by keeping everyone inside he's saving them, or if it goes beyond that. How much does Bernard know? I also enjoyed the juxtaposition between young Juliette letting her rabbit go to freedom and adult Juliette being arrested. This will later lead her to recognizing Paul's signs of the syndrome and using it to escape over the edge of the silo. Now, I'm just as curious as you on how she's going to get out of this one. My best guess is that she just dropped down to the next level. We've seen that several of these levels have these platforms that lead out into the outer rim of the silo, so she could have easily landed there and continued her escape. But other than that, I'm not sure how else she would survive. And now it's time for that part of the video where we go over the trailers to see if there are any new clues on what could be happening next. Just a reminder, I won't be going over every scene, just the ones that pertain to what I think will be coming up next. Here we have Bernard accompanying Sims in the surveillance room. Now that we know he's the guy in charge, it's possible they're using the cameras in their search for Juliette or other conspirators. Here's Amundsen with other judicial raiders, and I'm curious whose apartment this is. I'm not exactly sure we've seen this apartment before, so I'm gonna guess Lucas. Check out Bernard here saying the same words used when someone is about to clean. He's also in the corridor leading to the outside, so it could be that Juliette or another one of her compatriots is being sent out. Juliette somehow gets her hard drive back. The last we saw the hard drive, she had put it in her bag in Lucas's apartment, which Sims later takes off her in the cornfield. She either gets it back somehow, the one she gave him was a fake, or Sims gives it to her, perhaps even switching sides. Now there's a shot of Sims, his son, and potentially wife, and it doesn't look like something fun has just happened. If there's something that would make Sims switch sides, it would be his son. Could he be given some new information that changes everything? But now I turn it over to you and want to know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, please be sure to like and subscribe, and for more bad takes you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember,
Silo always wins.